The Otto Foundation is an education-focused philanthropic organization established in 2016. In our social newscast today with me, Sam Marshall, brought to you by Social TV, we have a chat to the CEO, Zephany Ladbrooke, about their passion for education, literacy, and about the transformative power of books and stories. Zephany, thanks for your time. Let's talk about kind of the work the Otto Foundation is doing at the moment.
All right. Yeah, it's a very good question and something I love talking about. We started 4 years ago by building and donating a library to two schools in the District 6 area called Zonneblum Girls and Zonneblum Boys. And our work has grown organically through the operation of that library because we just realized where we can really make a difference and where we really enjoy working is a space of getting kids to read for enjoyment. And a part of doing that is creating beautiful, safe spaces for them to read. So that's building libraries, stocking it with representative books. So books where the kids can see themselves, books that kids want to read. So not just your classic stories that we necessarily had access to as kids, but more focus on South African and African literature. And the reason for us doing this is very much because there's a lot of research that backs up kids who read for enjoyment have much bigger success than later on academically and also after school. And it's a bigger determinant of success than socioeconomic background. So that's a good indication to us that getting kids to read and read for enjoyment is very important to uplifting our communities and our country. And also, of course, we know what the stats are saying about kids just actually not being able to read. So we do focus a little bit through our library lessons on getting kids to be able to read. And then hopefully a lot of them will go on and actually enjoy reading. So that sums it up. And then with that, we offer lots of programmatic support and we train the librarians and we make sure we have latest South African and African books available. And then our non-core projects support our work in terms of we have feeding schemes so the kids are well fed, and we have a community keepers office for two of the schools so you can work with kids who have other issues that could detract from their ability to learn, and we support staff members and employ staff members and that's the kind of work we do.
I think it's very important, and you've mentioned it twice now, the availability of reading material that's reflective of the communities you come from. How important is it that when a child is in that library that they actually do see stories and characters and images that look, feel and sound authentically to where they come from?
Well, the research definitely shows it's very important, and we can, from an anecdotal point of view, see kids coming in and being so excited about stories. We've had a theme talking about hair and lots of books that cover the topic of various different hair. And Lupita Nyong'o wrote the most beautiful book about her skin color called Sulwe, and how it's beautiful and how the kids react to that. So if you're not a reader, you are just drawn to a book where you can see yourself on the front cover or hear your story between the pages. For kids who do love reading already, it's just enhancement of it. But they are still drawn to your Diary of a Wimpy Kid. But to get kids to read for enjoyment, it's vital. It's a necessity for them to be able to see or hear themselves between the pages.
Where do these kids come from and the communities that this program serves?
Okay, that's very interesting. What does the community look like? I think it's a beautiful melting pot of South Africa at its best. The schools that we work at are in one geographical area known as District 6. Some people might know it by Zonneblum, but it's officially known as District 6. However, the kids, and this is in the heart of Cape Town, and the kids come in from areas all around Cape Town, disadvantaged areas. Therefore, the schools are known as commuter schools, so they pay lots of money to get on transport and commute into the school. Some of them commute up to 2 hours at a time just to get to school because their parents value education and believe that city schools are able to offer them a better edge and a good education. So this work is important because we are creating these safe spaces for kids, and we're creating physical environments where kids can learn to read and read for enjoyment. And that's not something, that culture isn't very strong or very prevalent right now. And it's important for kids to feel safe. And if you want kids to learn, you need to tell them that they're safe and have a safe space for them to learn. And District 6 is it's quite got a very, very strong history and a very sad history. And a lot of the community kids are no longer attending the schools. We would say about 15% of the community actually send their kids to these schools. And the majority of the kids are coming from townships far away because the parents do put a premium on good education.
One of the things that I think is critical, teachers and the library played a very prominent role in my life. Being a leader within the foundation, that role, and you talked a little bit earlier and you alluded to the fact that the librarians are trained, that you've got the support structure with community keepers, you're running feeding programs. It would have been easy to say, we'll give you books and we're going to talk to you about reading for enjoyment. But somehow along the line, as the CEO, you must have seen, well, books can't just be enough, because what's the point of having books if somebody is coming into the library hungry? How did that evolve the rest of the services, the relationship with community keepers? Because you could have just said, and there are many programs, rightfully or wrongfully, that say, well, this is our thing and this is what we stick to.
I think it is important for some organizations to stick to their lane. Early on, we realized to see maximum impact, we wanted to adopt a holistic or a whole school approach. It doesn't necessarily mean we can offer all the services that are necessary, and that's why we partner and continue to partner and look for partners who offer some of the other services, in the instance of community keepers that looks after the kids' psychosocial well-being. And we partner with the Click Foundation for e-literacy programs. But there's no ways, and the analogy is, just because there's a swimming pool, someone isn't going to be able to swim. There's no ways if you have a library stocked with books that kids are going to read. You need, the heart of the library is the amazing librarian who's trained and who understands what the kids want to read, and then filling it up with new books all the time. Nothing breaks my heart more than to go into a library where there are books, international books, from 1975. You're not going to get anyone who wants to read that, and they're going to look at this book and go, well, is this what reading is? And when you see the kids walk into the library, you can quickly see what their needs are. You've got young kids that are too tired because they're traveling far, and you need to cater for their needs, and they just need to lie down a little bit in a comfortable spot in the library. And you've got kids who are hungry to read and ask you about books, and you need to be able to say to them, we don't have that book, but let's work on getting that book. And you've got to listen to what the teachers are saying to you, that the kids are reading or the kids are struggling to read. And an example I always use, which really drives the point home, is we've partnered with an organization called Shine Literacy. They do paired, or up until COVID, they did paired reading with kids that were identified to slightly struggle with reading. And they saw two little boys who were really, really not managing. And obviously the boys aren't going to benefit from taking books out in the library either necessarily. And then Shine was clever enough to refer them to community keepers for sessions. And it just turns out these boys were heavily despondent and very depressed. And that was hindering their ability to learn and hindering their ability to read. So to make them come to the library and say, you will read the following book, bring it back next week, it's not going to be effective. And that's the same with hungry kids. So we did have a scheme where we had fresh fruit delivered once a week as well. But now we just have the feeding schemes where the kids get 2 meals a day. So you just really, by being frontline and in the cold face of the work and working with the kids, you really just see what their needs are.
Yeah, I think it might be a question that you've heard often, Zephany, doing interviews. But obviously, it's a foregone conclusion that COVID has impacted your operations and the way you guys operate. But the question really is, how much did you have to kind of change the model, or are you sticking to the model pre-COVID, or has COVID impacted the way you operate?
Yes, COVID has definitely impacted the way we operate. It's very, very tragic. The kids aren't coming to school as often, so obviously the teachers are under pressure to get the syllabus and the curriculum across to them, which means they were quite hesitant to send the kids to the library. So we had to fight really hard or work really hard to say to them, we're trying to supplement the work that you're doing, not take away or detract from that. Also, of course, we had to reroute finances to simple things like PPE because the department, even though these are departmental schools, the department couldn't cover PPE and sanitization stations for the kids. So that took away from some of our funding to that. So we had to think quite out of the box as well. And what we've come up now with is reading nooks in the classrooms. So if kids can't make it up to the library, they are surrounded by books all the time. So we've developed and designed beautiful reading spaces in classrooms. And what we are working on at the moment is the reading bench concept, where there will be a volunteer, because one of the most effective reading interventions is still the targeted approach of reading one-on-one. So what we really want to do is design beautiful benches on this estate at these schools. It also gives kids an opportunity to be outside and sit somewhere beautiful and have a volunteer who has a selection of books and sits and reads with them. Hopefully then, we can reach more kids. And then, of course, our librarians had to go down into the classes, so we had to have little mobile trolleys. And you just have to be quick and think on your feet. And our funding wasn't we couldn't apply for a lot of external funding to supplement some of our programs because obviously funders had to focus on getting food to their projects or, more triage, I suppose. Triage in our field, the PPE and COVID.
How do you, this is the final question, how do you see the program run? Because the ultimate idea is that obviously you've always had a very strong focus on the work that you do. You've identified, as you said, what works for you and where you bring in partners. How important is partnership now, especially with funding models being changed? People redirecting a lot of those funds. It looks like COVID and the intervention is going to be a much longer. And how does your planning work now?
That is a very difficult question and even more difficult to answer. We've decided, because of for the long run, for the most impact for us is to double down on our library construction and library support program. So to answer your question in short, partnerships are vital now. In order for us to function and achieve outcomes, we need to partner with as many organizations that buy into our mission of a holistic school approach. Our partner or our role in this partnership will be to build the libraries and to run the library programs and to get kids to read for enjoyment. And we've got lots of programs and lots of ideas on how we can do this. Ultimately, we'd love to be the development or the developer for the curriculum for the schools across the country. One organization we partner with is the Bookery. They've opened 90 libraries across the country to date. We do the training of their librarians. This does mean that a lot of the other projects that we do support, what we call our non-core projects, can not fall by the wayside, but we cannot necessarily be running with them anymore. And this is where we would actively be looking for partners. An example of that is these schools are, like I mentioned, in District 6. There's a lot of space on the estate where 3 of the schools are operating, but no sports fields, no sports curriculum. So I would actively spend time looking for organizations that can fund sports programs and also run sports programs for these kids. Because as important as it is to have a kid fed and well nourished and their mental well-being looked after in order to perform in the class, a child's physical well-being is equally important. And this kind of work we cannot do without partners. It's not our field of expertise, and also we don't have the resources to be funding sports programs. So then we would look for organizations that have that focus. And that's the same with psychosocial well-being or e-learning or whatever we feel is currently an impediment to our work or that would work to bolster our work. And so, partnerships are vital. I don't think we can go forth without very strong strategic partnerships. But our aim is definitely to be building 5 new libraries at primary schools or schools in the District 6 area.